हाँ
Your side.
हाँ हाँ थोड़ी सी और करनी पड़ेगी अभी मैं फोन किया। Welcome back. You're watching our special broadcast on the 17th BRICS Summit underway in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I'm Tanvi Taneja and with me is Gautam Roy, and we are bringing you a minute-to-minute update from Rio, where we are all standing by for the session on environment, COP30 and global health. Our correspondent Meghna Dev is also with us on this special broadcast.
Yes, and we can expect a lot to be put across where the position of the BRICS have a certain, they align with each other. They have some sort of a common sort of a cause where the environment is concerned, because there are a lot of issues where although everybody is committed to net zero with their own timelines in this case, but how to get there is it still has been open to debate all along. It is still open to debate, and the BRICS has its own voice on it. Let's try and bring in our guests as well. We have a new set of guests joining us in this particular part, this segment of our show. We have Bhashwati Mukherjee, former senior diplomat, joining us, as well as we have Professor Arvind Kumar from the School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. Welcome to you both. First to you, Bhashwati Mukherjee, what can you tell us about how the BRICS have a common cause where the environment is concerned and how to get to net zero, but they do diverge significantly from the West, and then we have Donald Trump, who's walked away from Paris altogether.
Absolutely. In fact, Donald Trump has also written on his social media posts that he's going to impose additional tariffs on anyone who has anything to do with BRICS. That was the good news we received this morning when we looked at our telephone. As far as this meeting is concerned, as you rightly pointed out, Gautam, the environment is of prime importance. Unfortunately, President Trump has walked away from the commitment that his predecessor had made regarding climate change, which is a shame. But on the other hand, with this expanded BRICS, a very large part of the world is embracing climate change. Among the membership of BRICS actually are the strongest economies, the most peopled countries in the world, the most important countries in the world, and a clear demonstration that BRICS like G20 is on the path to taking on reforms which should actually emanate from the UN Security Council and the UNGA. In this particular case, for instance, Brazil has been particularly imaginative and innovative with regard to alternative renewable sources of energy, which we have now gone ahead, and we are now on an extremely sound footing on renewable energy. Brazil actually showed the way forward about 15 years ago, and the Brazilian president is hosting a bilateral meet with our Prime Minister once BRICS is over. So I think there is a lot there. We also, our Prime Minister also established, along with France, the International Solar Alliance. These are all ways in which we can keep our planet safe at a time when there are islands in the South Pacific which are sinking on a yearly basis, and some may be completely submerged in the next 15 years. So there couldn't be any item more important than climate change, and we look forward to seeing the exact language of the declaration which will emanate after this meeting.
Okay. Professor Arvind, on a more general plane, what would you say is the special significance of this expanded BRICS grouping? Brazilian President Lula da Silva, in fact, drew a parallel with Cold War's non-aligned movement, saying that was also a grouping where developing nations chose to refrain from being on the other side of the polarized world order. How do you see this expanded BRICS grouping?
I think this is very well planned. The whole expansion of BRICS, if you see the way the member countries have come up, they are basically showing the sign of strengthening the global South, and how that global South basically will have their voice, will become very predominant in setting the agenda for the international system. If you see the Rio Declaration, I think each and every part of the challenge for the globe, I think, has found place in the Rio Declaration. And they are attempting to find a solution to many of these global problems. So I think this expanded BRICS I think is going to be the major part where they will see that how best they can work with the solidarity and bring up the most salient part of the debate now, that how there could be some improvement in the global, in fact, economic governance. There should be some change in, obviously, the UN Security Council, the political governance. I think a lot of these things basically are going to be the focus of this expanded BRICS. And if you see the partner countries, I think there are 10 in number. And each of the partner countries now has their significance, because now they are focusing more on the countries from Central Asia. And obviously, you see Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all these are becoming part of the partner countries. They really are also focusing on the countries which have been showing a sign of consistent growth in their economy. And if you see the overall contribution of the BRICS or the expanded BRICS in the GDP of the global economy, it is now touching more than 50% of the global economy is coming from these countries. So I think BRICS basically is coming up with a very strong base, especially in changing the larger structure, not only in the field of the security, but also in the field of economy, and how there could be more collaboration among the member countries, and obviously work in an environment where they could create win-win situation for all. And India basically will remain in the forefront.
Right. And as far as this session is concerned, the Environment COP30 and Global Health Session, Bhashti Mukherjee, we will not only have the members there who will be expressing their standpoint, but also the partner countries and the outreach invitees also putting across their voice on this very, very critical subject, on the way forward, how we want to see the world going and developing as well. Keeping in mind sustainable development goals. So, do you feel that this is something that it will be very, very significant to see as to how, with an expanded BRICS and, all the partners on board and the outreach invitees as well, how consensus is formed on this vital subject?
Thank you, Gautam. I think there should be no difficulty in finding a consensus on climate change. The problem here is that when this issue was taken up, and even when there was this conference in France, there was assurance of funding for the global south so that they can make a smooth transition to green energy. Unfortunately, the Americans, who are supposed to give a large amount of the funds, have turned their back, and President Trump has publicly stated that he does not believe in climate change at all. He thinks it's a false narrative. So under those circumstances, the BRICS countries themselves will have to look at funding mechanisms to see how they can fund the most vulnerable, those most affected, which in my perspective are the South Pacific Islands, and to find funding mechanisms and to encourage the West, who have leapfrogged into clean energy after dirtying the environment, which we were not aware of because we missed our industrial revolution because of colonization. We have to find ways of funding, and that's very important. And I'm confident that that will do so. It is also important to remember that the Americans, for instance, have walked out of WHO. There's no money anymore from America for WHO. And there are strong rumors coming to me from my colleagues in UNESCO, because I was ambassador there for 6 years, that the next step of Trump is to walk out of UNESCO. These are all bodies which actually are meant for development, and they benefit the global south. So all these challenges will have to be taken on by this expanded BRICS with its partner countries, because if you look at them carefully, you would actually find that it seems to be a mini non-aligned grouping. Non-aligned countries that was a huge grouping. This is a much smaller grouping. I would prefer to call it a grouping of the global south and emerging countries, because the world has changed. But certainly it is a grouping that can look at these seemingly intractable issues, including how and why no compensation has been given on climate change as promised to so many countries, including our own country. We have actually set our own targets based on our own resources because we've not received any compensation whatsoever.
Yes, in the first plenary session itself, it was President Lula, as part of his speech, which basically laid the ground for the entire summit when he said that it's funny how the NATO countries are coming to a consensus on increasing their defense budgets to 5% of the GDP, which the US has been putting pressure on them to do, but they have not fulfilled their commitments to the global south, where issues of development assistance or for that matter climate justice are concerned, and that is something perhaps that will also be elaborated upon when there is an announcement on the leaders' framework declaration on climate finance and launch of BRICS partnership for the elimination of socially determined diseases. That is also something that is slated for today. Professor Arvind Kumar.
Yeah, I think one thing has become very clear from this BRICS summit, that the developing countries and the emerging economies, they have to take the responsibility now. I think the developed countries are no more significant, especially in terms of addressing to the concerns of climate change, despite the fact that they remain the largest, polluter or emitter of greenhouse gas. As you know, the US is the second largest emitter of greenhouse gas. But the way, in fact, they have withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, the way they really have been questioning about the climate change issues, are not showing the sign of owning the responsibility. I think the BRICS summit has shown that now, in fact, the developing countries and the emerging economies, how they will take it forward in terms of at least addressing to the concerns, because there is a strong opinion that more and more concentration of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, more and more challenges for climate change. So how to decrease this, I think, remains the significant part of the debate in this BRICS summit. And obviously, they have been working on that. And COP30, obviously, is going to be opening a new chapter where the agenda for the climate change, climate finance, climate justice would be set by the developing countries and the emerging economies. I don't think that anything to expect from the US, especially in terms of either addressing to the needs of climate finance or climate justice, I think will remain a part of the challenge. So I think now the onus lies largely on these countries, especially the BRICS countries, the expanded BRICS countries, how best they can come up with the solution to this emerging global problem.
Okay, Professor Arvind and Ambassador Baswati, request you to stay with us as we formally are beginning the day 2 of the BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro. There is a family photo of the leaders in attendance. So these are not just partner countries, but also not just members, but partner countries and outreach invitees also here on our screen.
Yes, you can see the original number for the BRICS was 5. Then it became 11, and now it's, well, as has been said, a grouping that seems to be of the global south that has come together for this particular BRICS summit in Rio.
Yes, so Brazil assumed the BRICS chairship on 1st January this year with the theme Strengthening Global South Cooperation for More Inclusive and Sustainable Governance. So Brazil's presidency is focusing on 2 priorities here: Global South cooperation and BRICS partnerships for social, economic and environmental development. And that is the focus of this day, the session on environment, COP30 and global health.
Yes, it's a session that is expected to last for at least 3 hours. So it's going to be a long one where all those leaders that you perhaps see in the frame are going to express their views, if there aren't others that would be joining perhaps remotely. And each nation has its own standpoint where such a vital subject is concerned, which is to do with environment as well as COP30 and global health. COP30, of course, being held in Brazil itself, in Belém, just a few months down the line.
Yes, Brazil hosting the 17th BRICS summit in July, and come November they will host the COP30 summit. And of course, yesterday the BRICS members also advocated for India's hosting of the COP33 summit in 2028.
Yes, and the build up to the COP30 itself, and then if this proposal goes through for India to host COP33, Baswati Mukherjee, what do you make of that prospect itself? Because as far as COP30 is concerned, the absence of the US is going to be a major issue, perhaps because the world will then have to figure out what is the way forward with the US out of the picture.
I agree with you that those who have polluted the most, if they stay away and expect the rest of the world to clean up for them, that is extremely ironical and politically not acceptable. Unfortunately, I don't see President Trump changing his mind. He has had this opinion about climate change being a fake narrative. Now, I think for the last 15 years.
And this is despite Texas. What's happened now?
Despite Texas, this is despite the fact that there are so many wildfires in California and that the...
Florida has also been hit by multiple hurricanes in the past.
But yes, we can and we should, if they request us, host the next COP. And it would be a feather in our caps because it is actually India which developed along with France, as I said, the International Solar Alliance. And we are now doing great R&D on renewables, taking what Brazil achieved years ago one step forward. So if I'm not sure whether we have formally accepted, I haven't seen it on my social media account, but I'm sure that if we are asked to do so, we would definitely accept, and we would make it a highly successful summit like we did for G20. And we would try to perhaps persuade President Trump, if he's in a different frame of mind. Who knows, by that time he may have got the Nobel Peace Prize, which is, I believe, the only thing which bothers him. Maybe once he's got the Nobel Peace Prize, he may change his attitude on climate change. But somehow, Gautam, I doubt that. So I would keep I would be prepared for a COP meeting here without the Americans.
Well, if he pauses using B-2 bombers, maybe he might become a candidate sometime down the line for the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't see that happening in the immediate.
Indeed, indeed. Coming back to our focus on the environment session slated to happen in just a short while now in Rio. Well, the joint statement that has come yesterday is a pretty elaborate one, and the part on climate finance says that developed countries should take responsibility for the developing nations. In fact, the statement also says that, it blasts policies such as carbon border taxes and anti-deforestation laws, which Europe has adopted. But Europe, today the news also trickled in, Gautam, that EU may change its goals for climate change. So we will have to look at that aspect as and when it comes. But Professor Arvind Kumar, why is it
strengthen its commitments or weaken them?
That we have to see. But the news was that it's going to change its climate goals.
Yeah, things are very dynamic these days.
Let me make a point here, which is very important. That one of the stipulations of Paris Agreement indicated that the signatories to the Paris Agreement needed to reduce the dependency on the use of the fossil fuel by less than 60% by the year 2030. And all of you will be surprised to know that India has achieved the target in December 2022.
Yes.
So I think more responsibility has come to India now. When it assumes the leadership role for COP33, I think that could really be a way forward for India, that how best the rest of the world can learn from India's experience. How India basically was able to reduce the dependency on the use of the fossil fuel by less than 60%, 8 years before the deadline. And that speaks volume about India's intent. And that perhaps now is being watched by the rest of the world. And as I say, the developed countries, the way they really have been behaving, especially in terms of all these negotiations, especially if you see the COP meetings, I think they really are giving up their responsibilities in terms of coming up with at least they are not even showing the solidarity. And that is perhaps one of the challenges for any of these, decisions taken in the COP meetings, and how is that could really culminate into tangibles. So what I see is that intangibles remain intangibles. And they, unless and until they get culminated into tangibles, I don't think that anything is going to happen with a degree of responsibility, especially by the developed countries.
And Ms. Mukherjee, already, I mean, this particular session that is supposed to be getting underway in Rio, again, do you think it is a fertile ground for Prime Minister Modi to showcase the kind of things that India has achieved where its climate commitments are concerned? Professor Arvind Kumar mentioned one of them, that we have, in terms of our commitments towards the elimination of fossil fuels, made significant progress. We are perhaps the most ahead as far as the race to reduce the use of fossil fuels are concerned among all developing countries. But India has done much else as well in terms of its commitments to generating renewable energy. We had said that we will get to a certain point where there will be 500 megawatts of renewable energy that we'll be generating. We're pretty much on course to achieving that goal. And there are so many other initiatives that India has taken, such as the International Solar Alliance, the CRDI, the Biofuels Alliance. These are global initiatives where we are responding to the situation that is developing because of climate change.
But absolutely, Gautam, you really analyzed it, and I would like to compliment my co-panelists for raising this point. The whole issue is that in 1947, India was left plundered, partitioned, bleeding, with a 24 mortality age of 24, education at 19%. From 1947 to 2025, where have we climbed? We have taken this forward. We've done it on our own. Our Prime Minister has shown the necessary leadership to lead this vast country of 1.4 billion people to meet its obligations 8 years before schedule, as my co-panelist pointed out. And we have developed a lot, and we are researching on green energy. We are using green energy, even we are trying to switch in our refineries, in whatever we are attempting to do in the future for future projects. That solar energy is no longer something esoteric. You have solar energy plants all over the major cities, not just in Ahmedabad, but here. So we have a lot to show the world, and also we've done it in our own way and with our own finances. Although we are a developing country that has been colonized for 180 years, did our colonial masters give us a penny to clean up? Not at all. We did it on our own, and it's clear to me that climate financing the West, I think they're going to go backwards, Gautam, because they have been forced to increase their military expenditure. Usually the EU used to spend quite a bit of money on these kind of issues. But if they are being forced at a time when their economies are not in good shape to increase military expenditure, I'm sure they will cut back on climate change. It's bound to happen. And on health research also. These are the things which will be affected because they are being forced to increase military expenditure. I don't see any other way out. I don't think the news is good on that front at all.
Yes, where will they find the money for all the toys that they want to buy because of the threat that is emerging for them from the east? But I just want to set the record straight. I used the wrong unit for India's climate commitments where renewable energy is concerned. It's gigawatts, not megawatts. 500 gigawatts by 2030.
Okay. Professor Arvind Kumar, Brazil yesterday proposed to protect endangered forests by establishing a forest fund. It's called Tropical Forest Forever Facility, in which the developing countries will, actually fund so that climate change and the shrinking of forest cover can be prevented. Do you think it's a step in the right direction, finding solutions within emerging economies?
I think this is a very important area that Hobbes could really emphasize on developing forests, because that really perhaps becomes the carbon sink. Unless you develop more of carbon sink, I don't think that is going to be any solution for this emerging problem. And in that context, I think this particular idea of Brazil obviously has to get support from not only the developing countries. Obviously, the whole title of that is that the funds might really get generated for developing countries, but developed countries also really will have to take responsibility. And as you see, the impact of that particular forest thing would really be in the very positive direction, because that obviously would be able to absorb more and more of carbon, and that perhaps is the requirement in the current context.
Right. And again, in terms of how India has been sticking to its climate commitments and the impact that it has had, we've already seen how there's been a 7.93, almost 8% drop in greenhouse gas emissions that India has put across, and it is already on its way to achieving that goal of 500 gigawatts of renewable energy as well by 2030, which means effectively about 50% of its energy use. So do you feel that this is something that can be pursued very actively, and India can show the way, Bhashwati Mukherjee, as to how it can be done for, well, at least the global south, if not the entire world?
It's something, Gautam, that we would be happy to share. And we have already been approached, I'm told, by countries from the global south, asking us to share our experience with them. because we've done it, as I said, on our own. Therefore, I feel that this invitation to India to host the next climate change summit in India is really fortuitous, and we would be in a position then to showcase some of our achievements, which are quite remarkable, because we have even tried to bring about green energy in areas which nobody has ever envisaged, including the industrialized West. Moreover, the fact that in EU, for example, they are themselves seeing the effect of climate change. For instance, the temperature in Paris, where I was posted there, never went beyond 33 degrees. Temperature in Paris reached 42 degrees. So therefore, along with the climate change and the heating, will come all the tropical diseases which they associate with us. We are the country of tropical diseases. All these tropical diseases will go to the West. So they have to spend some money on climate change, and they have to compensate developing countries, because we are not responsible for this disaster. They are responsible. They have leapfrogged into being developed. And in our pursuit to become developed, we have to pay more, because we are not getting any assistance from those who polluted. So those who did not pollute are being made to pay for the sins of those who polluted. And that is something that we need to discuss at a climate change summit, which India will hold.
Oh yes, it's impacting lives in a major way. You mentioned how in Paris temperature soared to 42 degrees Celsius, and in most of the Western world, there are no air conditioners that have been installed in most of the homes, and they have heaters for their winters, but they don't have air conditioners. And a lot of these homes, they do not even have the kind of space that is required to set up air conditioners, that they might have to be remodeled. So the implications for the people and the impact on their everyday lives and expenses is huge, and all these things need to be attended to.
Actually, Gautam, not only is there no scope for air conditioners, as you rightly pointed out, there even the normal, humble fans, pedestal fans, they are not available in the height of summer. They are all purchased. And you know, in places like Paris, etc., there are no ceiling fans at all. They don't know what a ceiling fan looks like. So they will have to change their entire lifestyle of sitting out in the cafe, having their lunch, enjoying a nice evening. They will have to make radical changes in their lifestyle because of climate change. The entire scenario, particularly all the way from the countries around the Mediterranean and moving upwards, has completely changed. The same is true in the United States, where in New York City, when I was there, it was never like this. Now New York City is exactly the way I remember Kolkata before the rain. Very hot and very, very muggy. That is what New York City is in the months of July and August. It's unheard of. So whether Trump likes it or he doesn't like it, one day he will have to accept that climate change has come to the United States in a big way and is warming the oceans. So he has to accept it. And I do hope that better sense will prevail, and that when we host the summit, he comes for it. What is the date of the summit, suggested summit, Gautam? Is it early next year, or?
It's November.
This year, ma'am.
This year itself.
Yeah, that's the date for COP30. So, of course, Brazil's chairmanship of the BRICS and the COP30 follow in succession. So, one can expect further momentum on climate change policy, considering that...
Plus, we're also expecting Donald Trump to be in India as well sometime this year or early next for the Quad Summit. So, there is ample room to talk about a range of things there as well, because the Quad has a lot of initiatives on climate too, apart from other issues.
Would you like to respond to that, Professor Arvind? The fact that BRICS nations represent, more than half of the world's population and 40% of its economic output. So, with an expanded grouping, what will it take for BRICS to have a more say in the global world order?
I think, as I said, that BRICS will have more participation in the agenda setting, and that perhaps is one signaling which the US in particular has been getting. That is why they have been making a lot of statements which are on the contrary to the BRICS nations' interest. I think BRICS, they are going to be predominant in the international system for the simple reason that most of the problems which the world really has been confronting with, the US is not going to assume responsibility anymore to come up with a solution. That is why if you see the Rio declaration, it's 31-page declaration, covers everything. The wide gamut of issues really have been covered in the Rio declaration. And I don't see anything which has been left, whether to do with even technology. In fact, advances in technology, they talk about global AI governance system is required. They talk about the advances in the outer space. So I think they really are coming up with a greater focus in terms of finding solution to many of these emerging global problems. So I think the global order is going to be completely different. And more importantly, I see a change in China's mindset. China basically also really has supported this Rio declaration in every manner. The wording, when you see how the condemnation, especially on Pahalgam, has been done, and that China also really has taken initiative in terms of condemning that, is a great change in terms of their approach towards many of these issues.
Right.
So I think there is a clear change in the mindset of Global South, and more, in fact, consensus on many of these global issues, more and more betterment for the international system. This is what I perceive the global order is going to be.
Okay, we have some of the latest coming in from Rio. My colleague who's there, Akhilesh Suman, has put across that Prime Minister Modi will soon make his intervention in the BRICS session, which is all about the environment, COP30 and global health. And we've had some of the content of the speech that President Lula has delivered there, Ms. Mukherjee, and I'd like to respond, you to respond to that. He said that global health is also deeply affected by poverty. BRICS wants technology transfer to confront this challenge, and this kind of attitude that has been there, it is this issue that is giving rise to socially determined diseases. And if you could elaborate on what exactly are socially determined diseases for the benefit of everyone who's tuning in, I would really appreciate that.
Thank you, Gautam. Actually, I think here again, we have much to demonstrate not to the global south, they know that, but to the world. Because when, for instance, we had the COVID pandemic, the developed countries refused to share their extra vaccines with the global south, including those who were terribly affected, including in Africa. We, on the other hand, although we did not at that time have enough vaccines for the entire population, we still generously airlifted our vaccines to the countries most in need. This was at a time when WHO was well funded. Now WHO is not well funded because Americans have walked out. So here again, I would agree with President Lula that we need to prepare ourselves for future pandemics. We need to have cooperation between the global south in BRICS so that in the case of the worst happening, a vaccine can be developed immediately. It can be developed in large numbers, and it can be shipped out to the most vulnerable, because unless, and this is where, that is the fault of the West that they don't understand, that if you don't protect the most vulnerable, the pandemic will become global. They think that it's just enough for them to save their own population. The world is now globalized. You cannot stop the pandemic from coming inside your home. And that is why it is important to have cooperation. And that is exactly what happened in the West, for example, Gautam, where in the US, people that took the COVID vaccine 5-6 times, and they got COVID 3-4 times. Whereas many of us, including myself, we took the COVID vaccine and one shot extra. And many of us, including I was lucky, I never got COVID. But the point here is that we did not take so many multiple shots. But we made sure that Africans, etc., who needed it, we gave them what was ours. We demonstrated the solidarity with the global south, and that is what is of primary importance, because now that WHO funding from the United States has dried up, here again, global south will have to chip in, and we'll have to see how we can get our resources together to tackle another pandemic, which could come take the world by surprise, just the way COVID-19 did. So I'm very happy that this is being discussed in detail.
Yeah, it's funny, Bhashti Mukherjee, when you mentioned the multiple shots that many people in the West took for COVID and still got COVID, reminds you of the gluttony of the Romans, who used to eat in their orgies, their food orgies, and then regurgitate just to eat again. Yeah. I mean, that is the kind of scenario that we've been seeing in terms of consumption of resources at every level, and the misuse or abuse of the environment at the hands of the West, which is an issue which perhaps is being highlighted by the leaders right now. And President Lula dwelled on a very small part of it about these diseases that are caused by the kind of inequity, essentially, that is there in the world, and again, the access to resources that is denied to a large part of the global south, and that is what is being sought to be addressed by the leaders. And very soon we'll have Prime Minister Modi's intervention there as well, and perhaps we will also hear on what is happening as far as that idea of India hosting COP33 is also concerned.
Also, the fact that India will host the next BRICS summit in India in 2026. Yes, as Ambassador Bashwati.
Yes, the gavel is likely to be passed on as well today.
Yes, that will happen also today post this session. And on our screens, we can see these live visuals coming from Rio. Well, President Lula has spoken. He is the host here at this 17th BRICS summit. So he has touched upon the global health part of the session. And of course, India will also present the various achievements it has taken on the environmental front, on reducing the carbon footprint. And of course, all this will come handy when the gavel is passed on to us as we host the next BRICS summit in India, and of course transform BRICS into a practical engine of development with a focus on sustainable development practices. The session on economic multilateralism yesterday, Prime Minister Modi gave very distinct examples of BRICS agricultural research platform that is established in India, which is a medium for sharing best practices in agri-biotech, precision farming. Then he also mentioned on focusing on securing and making our supply chains resilient, because he said that no country, it should be ensured that no country uses these resources solely for its own interests or as a weapon. Of course, in the changing world order where there are conflicts, these resources are being used as a weapon. Coming to the conflicts also now a little bit, both Professor Arvind and Bashwati Mukherjee, do you think BRICS can be used as a forum to, tell the partner countries, the member countries, that enough is enough on the global wartime situation, because Russia-Ukraine war seems to just not be ending?
Would you like me to respond? Or
yes, please go ahead. Yes.
I think that it would be difficult for BRICS, given its current membership, to come up with really realistic solutions to some of the conflicts. But certainly it can come up with a realistic solution to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because the Russians are there, the Chinese are there, we are there. We are acceptable to both sides, Russia and Ukraine. There are other countries, Brazil, etc., who have in fact initially they condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine, then stepped back a bit as far as language was concerned. So yes, on Russia, Ukraine, it would be interesting to see what kind of paragraph emerges in the declaration. As far as the Israel-Iran issue is concerned, because Iran is now a partner country, it would be difficult to do a balancing act for some of the countries, including India, keeping in mind our very strong, close strategic partnership with Israel on one hand, and on the other hand, the fact that we have an excellent working relationship with the Iranians. There again, considerable amount of diplomatic dexterity.
Okay, so yes, leaders of the BRICS group of developing nations, while condemning the attacks in Pahalgam, they also condemned the attacks on Iran and Gaza, and also said that it presented the bloc as a defender of multilateral diplomacy. How important is such multilateral diplomacy in this regard, Professor Arvind?
And condemn is fairly significant here, because that was not the kind of language that was used previously.
Yeah.
Right. I think this is a sea change in terms of, in fact, even coming up with such word. I think they really have condemned openly the attack on Iran. They have also been able to put across the challenges associated with the nuclear weapon. and how best that could be a stabilizing. So a lot of these things really have been put in that declaration. And they say it very clearly that unless and until there is a multilateral grouping which really can come up with this type of challenges and also make an attempt to find solution, I don't think there could be any movement forward. So they really have been very emphatic in terms of using the word peace and diplomacy. And that is something which is very much significant in the current context. So whether it is Gaza or whether it is Iran, even they mentioned about that how Iran basically was following the full scope safeguard because those reactors which they were attacked were under IAEA safeguards, and how that obviously has proved detrimental to all the effort, and how that safety question really has been seen as a part of the challenge. So I think a lot of these things really have been put in the declaration, which clearly demonstrates that they are moving towards how best they could really have multilateralism as the greater focus where they could really be depending on, and how best they could strengthen this effort through that multilateralism.
Right. Well, we've seen BRICS responding to how the West has not really catered to the needs of the global South through the launch of its own institutions. We've seen it launch the New Development Bank, the Contingent Reserve Arrangement. It's come up with, well, tried to come up with a payment system as well, but I don't think there's complete consensus on that yet. And there's been talk of a BRICS bridge, although the talks of potential currency, a common currency, have not really moved forward. But Bharati Mukherjee, do you feel that there is ground for BRICS to talk about alternatives to these global institutions, beyond what it has already done, because of the lack of response to the calls that have been given again and again for reform, because it's all been falling on deaf ears?
I think it's already very clear, Gautam, from the development of institutions like G20, BRICS, etc., that alternative forms of global governance are being worked out, because those who matter are not in the UN Security Council. If you look at the composition of the P5, it doesn't have India, it doesn't have Japan, it doesn't have an Arab, it doesn't have a black African, it doesn't have Brazil. So what does it have? It has the tired, jaded powers of the victors of World War II. That's what it has, including United Kingdom, whose GDP is far below ours, etc. So what does it prove? It proves that the UN Security Council has outlived its utility, and you therefore need new multilateral mechanisms to fill the gap. Unfortunately, because of the UN Charter, there are certain obligations which are institutionalized in the functioning of the Security Council. So if we have to develop an alternative global mechanism, we have to work out a system by which we can enforce or ensure that the decisions that we take are respected by all. Another way of doing so is for the BRICS to force through the reform of the UN Security Council, and that would be good because it has already two permanent members, China and Russia, and they should force through the reform of the UN Security Council. Otherwise, imagine a country like India, when we came back to the Security Council as a non-permanent member after 19 years, and that is not acceptable. And now, who is the president of the UN Security Council this month? Guess what? It is Pakistan.
Yes.
Pakistan is the chairman of the UN Security Council for the month of July. It's a rotating chairmanship. So there can be nothing more ludicrous than to have Pakistan chairing the UN Security Council at this time of global history. So that really underlines and underscores, as you said, Gautam, the need for multilateral reform. And I would call it, PM usually uses the word multipolarity. What we need, multipolarity, not non-alignment. Non-alignment, multipolarity ensures there are different poles which keep the global order together and which ensure international peace and security through multipoles, not unipoles. Not a unipolar world, but a multipolar world.
Okay, I want your view on this again as well, Bharati Mukherjee. If there's a Donald Trump who can walk out of the World Health Organization, and you're saying that next step after shutting down US aid will be walking out of UNESCO, why can't the BRICS say that look, you don't hear what we're trying to say, you're not amenable to carrying out the kind of reforms that we've been suggesting for the UN, for the WTO, for the World Bank, for the IMF, so we'll walk out as well?
Well, actually, it doesn't serve our interest, Gautam, to walk out. because we believe in inclusive global politics. We don't have an exclusionist approach like Trump has. Moreover, if you would have seen, Trump has now threatened each and every BRICS country, which includes India, I suppose, with extra tariffs if we have anything to do with BRICS. That means that he is going to put additional tariffs on a very large number of important emerging countries.
But do you think he'll carry out this threat if it comes to it? Because he'll have to do it not just with, well, he'll be happy doing it with China and Russia, I guess, but there's India in the mix, there's Saudi Arabia, UAE as well. These are, well, almost allies, not technically so, but to a large extent, yes, they're aligned.
He may keep postponing the deadline. That's what he usually does, no, with tariffs.
He has done it today also, August 1 from July 9th, yes.
So he may just keep postponing, but the point is that he has shown his extreme displeasure that such a gathering is taking place in Rio under the chairmanship of the President of Brazil, where so many important global leaders, including our own Prime Minister, is there, are demonstrating that the balance of power is inexorably shifting from the West to the East, to Asia, and to some parts of Latin America. This is an inexorable power shift which Trump can do nothing about. It was bound to happen. It's an emerging new global order which which will take a bit of time to settle down, but it is an emerging global order based on multipolarity and solidarity with the global South. Whether he accepts it or he doesn't accept it is irrelevant, because history has to march on, and it will happen. It is happening as we speak. The new global order. From the photographs on your screen, you can see the new global order. You can see Prime Minister Modi there. You can see the Brazilian president there. You can see the South African there. These are all leaders of the global South, and it was India that got in the African Union as a permanent member of G20. That was Prime Minister Modi and India's greatest achievement. How could you leave out 52 countries out of such a grouping? Now they are in, thanks to us. And that makes a big difference also as far as India's leadership of the global South is concerned.
Right. We have some fresh information coming in. Our colleague Meghna Dev has put it across. In fact, Akhilesh Suman, who is there representing DD News as well, has put it across. Prime Minister Modi's intervention has happened there at that session about Environment COP30 and World Health. And the Prime Minister has very clearly talked about how there is a collective responsibility that BRICS has taken on where these matters are concerned, and that this is being taken very seriously to combat diseases such as HIV, AIDS, malaria, TB and other diseases as well, where essential medicines and vaccines it's been, decided to go on with that.
Prime Minister Modi also defined BRICS as building resilience and innovation for cooperation and sustainability. Of course, that's what Prime Minister has said. He has actually given a new, BRICS, which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. He said building resilience and innovation for cooperation and sustainability. It said that this is what will be the meaning of BRICS from now on. And of course, as India takes on the chairmanship of BRICS, India will continue to collaborate with the members, and it will give more momentum to the issues of the global South and make this forum people-centric and humanity first. So these are the updates coming in from Prime Minister's address from Rio de Janeiro, where the session on environment, COP30 and global health is currently underway.
Right. How would you like to respond to that, Professor Arun Kumar? Prime Minister Modi saying that when India takes on the chair for BRICS, it will redefine BRICS. The entire abbreviation has been sort of coined in a certain way to show and to talk about building resilience and innovation for cooperation and sustainability. These are key themes that the Prime Minister seems to have underlined for India's chairpersonship of BRICS come next year.
That really is showing India's commitment and dedication, how best it could work with the expanded BRICS members and also the partner countries, especially in the context of finding solutions and also emphasize more on sustainability. But that perhaps is one area which India certainly will come up with a good number of solutions to the problems of sustainability, and that India will keep working on as the chair of the next BRICS summit. When 18th summit will happen in Delhi, obviously a lot of changes will happen in the next 1 year, and a lot of the solutions which we are talking about might find a blueprint in the Delhi Declaration next year.
Right.
Bhaswati Mukherjee, your concluding thoughts on, of course, the current expanded 17th BRICS Summit, Brazil's chairmanship, and the upcoming India's chairmanship for BRICS.
Well, I don't like to say it because it sounds as if I'm glorifying my own country. But in a way, these summits, and when we see the role that our Prime Minister plays in these summits, demonstrates that India is not emerging. India has emerged. India has arrived. We chaired the G20. We are now going to chair BRICS. We are into every single grouping that matters. We are in Quad. There's going to be a Quad summit. So it shows also that regardless of what some Western countries may do to have a small flirtation with the so-called field marshals, the country that matters is not the field marshal's country, but the country next to it. That's India. We matter. We are the country of the future. We have already emerged, and that the BRICS, when you see the kind of messages being given by our PM, the kind of bilaterals that he's had, the fact that President Lula is going to give a special separate banquet for him, all this would make every Indian heart swell with pride to say that we are now in the front of the global discourse on all important issues. And finally, it's taken a bit of time because we are a democracy, but finally we have emerged as a major power.
Well, certainly that's a thought that's coming across in terms of how India has put across its point of view, where this particular summit is concerned of BRICS, the 17th session of BRICS that is taking place in Rio. Prime Minister Modi putting across very clearly as to what India will be, how it will be taking forward the agenda of the BRICS when it takes on the chairpersonship of this institution come next year.
So yeah, strong global south, less dependence on the west. So this is what can be summarized with the BRICS 17th summit currently underway in Rio. So a lot more is expected. A lot of bilaterals are also lined up for the day. We'll keep getting you those updates in our subsequent bulletins. For now, it's a wrap on this special broadcast. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bhaswati and Professor Arvind, for joining us on this special presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.